A documentary about Kanye West titled Genius, yes, that's the real title, is coming out, I think, next month. And Kanye basically wants the final decision and the final cut over its release. Now, the first thing that people are probably going to be worried about is whether or not Kanye is going to be truthful, honest, and transparent about how he's being genuinely portrayed over these possibly decade-old clips that will be included in the documentary. The reason I ended up making this is because I also saw a video where Kanye is directly addressing the paparazzi while he is at the airport, telling them that if they're going to profit off of his image, off of his celebrity, off of his story, he wants a percentage of everything that they earn. In Kanye's mind, a somewhat decent solution or compromise in paparazzi's invasion of privacy, at least in subjective terms, is to essentially cut their pay by redirecting it to the person that they're taking pictures and videos of, when instead the solution should be to prevent them from being able to take those videos and images and post them to the internet entirely. But see, Kanye isn't advocating for privacy. Kanye's advocating for control of narrative. About a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, Kanye West had a feature on the Game song Easy, while he goes and basically responds to the narrative that's been floating around he and Kim's divorce, his children, his new relationship, and the inspiration for it so close to his divorce. Now, if y'all watched my response to that video, you'll know that I didn't feel entitled to know any of that information. I felt very uncomfortable listening to it because I felt like Kanye was trying to convince the listener of something as opposed to just revealing parts of himself that he likely wouldn't have had to reveal had he had 100% privacy in all of his actions. We're maybe 1 to 2 weeks out from that song's release, and I see no one talking about it. Likely because immediately the day after, Kanye came out to make a video detailing his negative experiences in dealing with the Kardashian family as it relates to him seeing his children, more specifically his daughter Chicago, on her birthday. But Kanye's motivation for making this video and putting it out to the public was so that he could control the narrative. And again, this being his life, his personal life, I don't have a problem with him documenting his experiences. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to tell the world all about your challenges in being a celebrity father and dealing with the pitfalls of having a relationship with someone who has so much control in whether or not you see your daughter, understandable. And I would rather him do that as opposed to make songs where he's essentially dissing the mother of his children, the relationship that they shared, and other intimate and private details about his personal life that I feel would be better introduced musically if he had more time to flesh them out, as opposed to making music responses to public narratives. But I'm linking all these things together because Kanye doesn't want or doesn't seem to care about privacy. Understandably so, Kanye cares more about what narrative and pictures being painted about him. Because at the end of the day, Kanye knows advocating for or trying to get a bill or a law in place that prevents paparazzi or people in general from taking pictures of public figures is incredibly unrealistic, and a compromise to that isn't demanding that the news outlet posting these pictures create an alternate revenue stream for the artists that they're taking these images of, because 9 times out of 10 the cash flow from that won't be lucrative enough for the artist to ever agree to being unlimitedly videoed and photographed without their permission. But again, Kanye's problem isn't privacy. Kanye's problem is narrative. And so when we get back to him releasing this Netflix documentary, and he says, I'm going to say this kindly for the last time, I must get final edit and approval on this doc before it releases on Netflix. Open the edit room immediately so I can be in charge of my own image. Now, this isn't a problem because Kanye West is a producer in the film, but there are enough people that are concerned about Kanye West's influence on the final edit because they don't understand that when you allow someone of Kanye West's stature or anyone who's having an autobiographical film written or produced or made about them, that individual is always going to have much of the say in how they are portrayed. So if Kanye West wants to be let in the editing room and he's a co-producer on the film, he should 100% have the right to how he is represented in this film. But I just want people to understand that if that is the case, do not expect this to be a 100% true, accurate portrayal or representation of all of the events that Kanye West went through from the film's infancy up until its end. I expect no form of journalistic integrity or no form of complete objective giving of information from this film. I am going to watch it. I am going to enjoy it, but I don't have that expectation of it. For instance, if you watch the movie Straight Outta Compton when it was released in theaters however many years ago, and looked at it as a biographical film that was told from an unbiased point of view that didn't have any influence or inclusion from the people that the film was about, then you're crazy. Even Eazy-E's daughter took to Twitter years ago to tell people that the original movie was missing a lot of information. She wasn't dissing the film, but just saying that there was a lot of information that was missing. So it was not an accurate portrayal or an objective view of the group itself. And it being released or marketed as a movie as opposed to a biographical film from an unbiased point of view is exactly what that was. Same thing about the Wu-Tang Clan. When you have that much influence or control over how you are portrayed, is going to look different. I guess the thing that's giving me pause is, why would you allow your life to be recorded for years, decades even, all for preparation to release a documentary about yourself, just to at the end of that recording process say, I want to have the final cut and edit over it, as if you no longer trust the people who were filming and recording these intimate conversations, processes, or moments that you gave them consent to this entire time. I understand things can be edited a certain way to portray certain images. I'm just shocked that this is something that's just now coming up at the end of the film, at the end of the documentary. Now we're talking about how I want it to be edited, how I want it to look, how I want to be portrayed. And maybe it's maturity. Maybe Kanye's thinking about this well after the fact, like maybe when I was younger I should have went over this, but now that we're at this point in my life where the media has, you know, taken things that I've said out of context and also had some of my worst moments shown and strongly benefited off of, how can I have such an intimate and close part of my life revealed while also having such a large part of control in it? And that's what I think Kanye is at this point. He just wants to, if he's hated, be hated off of his own merit and his own word, rather than feel like he's being consistently misconstrued or taken out of context or just flat out lied on. I just think we're at the end, like we're too far into the filming process for him to want to make changes or alterations now. Just like we're too far into the paparazzi culture for him to want to make revisions to include artists to be paid for being filmed and photographed without their consent. Does he have a point? Sure. But these are impulsive things to say, and the likelihood of people adopting this culture that Kanye is advocating for is low. I would love to see this film released without Kanye's hand on it. Not because I think Kanye's going to do something strange or have his image falsely represented, but because you get the most accurate, unbiased, and objective portrayal or view of someone when they think they're not being recorded or accessed. That's why there is such a interest, I guess, in paparazzi culture and candid photography in general, because people feel like they're seeing people when they feel like they're not being watched. As creepy as it sounds, there's a lot more authenticity and intimacy in moments that you can draw from people who feel like they're not being watched. But the only reason I feel comfortable saying that is because Kanye has allowed these people to film him, all in preparation for the release of this documentary. And if Kanye does at some point end up getting the final edit, the final say over how this film looks and how it portrays him, then that's going to be okay with me too, because this isn't a biography. The moment they allowed Kanye to have any hand in production for this film, journalistic integrity went out the window. The best I think Kanye could do in this is possibly delay it from coming out. But I don't think he understands that having control over these moments doesn't change people's opinion of you when you are in direct control of how you are portrayed. You ask the average person if they wanted a movie made about them, they're going to put their best moments in the film. Only how they want to be viewed, how they want to be interpreted into the film, as opposed to just being objects to be observed. And I know talking about people in that way sounds dehumanizing, but that's essentially what you agree to when you tell people that you don't mind having an autobiographical film made about you. And you can't at the last minute be like, nah, I want to be, you know, in on the final room floor. I want to have the final say. Nah, I want the paparazzi to pay me, even though it wouldn't be lucrative to me at all, and it wouldn't benefit their company in the slightest. Now I want to control the narrative about my personal life and my divorce and about my children, after making a song very loosely referencing them in response to the public narrative that I've allowed to go around. My biggest issue with Kanye wanting these things aren't that Kanye is necessarily wrong about the things that he wants. It's that he's always seems to be too late. People would have looked at him with far more sympathy had he come out with that video talking about him having difficulties seeing Chicago before he came out with a record addressing his divorce, or would have looked at him with far more empathy had he advocated for privacy for celebrities in general, as opposed to them being let in on monetary benefits from the tabloids. In the same way that people would have had far more empathy, I feel like, in this situation where he's asking for the final say over how he's portrayed, if he would have maybe brought those arguments or those concerns up before the recording process had even begun. On a moral scale, I agree with Kanye, but on a technical scale, he's just too late. I hope he gets these things solved and figured out, though, because honestly, I agree with him. I do think that he should have the rights to these things, but I also don't think that people should expect an unbiased point of view when Kanye has such a strong hand over all of this, if he ends up getting the final say.